from the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hi, thank you for listening. Whether it's on Georgia Now, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., we replay 11 p.m. at Progressive Voices via TuneIn, 8 to 10 a.m. the following morning on Georgia Now. Or, of course, if you're listening where you podcast, well, that's when and where you listen. Thank you so much for doing that. I do appreciate it. Got a full show today. Dana Barrett is running for Georgia Secretary of State's office. She is a Fulton County Commissioner, one of a couple that refused to rubber stamp vote in two MAGA election deniers to the Fulton County Election Board and was threatened with a fine and or jail time for that. So you might say she's a little on top of election integrity, election security, voter safety, voter rights, et cetera, and so on. She will join the show in just a few minutes. We'll talk about her running for the Democratic primary and to be the Secretary of State to succeed one Brad Raffensperger. Later in the show, we'll also talk with Chris Harden, who is running for Georgia's 11th Congressional District. That seat currently held by one MAGA Republican, Barry Loudermilk. We do have competition for the primary portion, at least on the Democratic side. Harden will be up against Barry Wolfert and Chase Laminack, the other two Democratic candidates that appear at Ballotpedia, telling us that that will at least be a competitive primary, we think. Also, I'll spend some time in the second half of the show going over Governor Brian Kemp's State of the State address earlier this morning at the Georgia Capitol and Representative Deborah Hughley's response from the Democratic Party as well. We have put in a call to see if she can come on. We will keep our fingers crossed on that. I've also reached out to frequent guest, friend of the show, Jay Bookman from the Georgia Recorder, who filed an op-ed that I'd actually like to add on to because there have been some interesting interviews of late given by the president to the New York Times and to Reuters. Bookman touching on the New York Times piece a little bit. And Jake Bookman, like a lot of us, a little concerned. We have Dana Barrett coming on, who's running for Secretary of State. Adrian Consinari was on earlier this week running for the same nomination from the Democratic primary. Both of them aiming to take the office currently held by Brad Raffensperger. I mean, if it wasn't abundantly clear in the weeks leading up to and the day of January 6, 2021, by now you should know this president has no respect for the results of elections if he doesn't like the outcome. And Georgia is a swingish sort of state. It's a state that he's had his eye on for quite a while and given a lot of scrutiny to those in positions to, I guess he thinks, to alter outcomes. Well, Senator John Ossoff is running for his Senate seat. The Senate now, according to some prognosticators, is actually in play for Democratic control. Can you believe that? The House seems to be very much moving in the direction, I should say, of Democratic control after the midterms. Donald Trump has told his congressional allies in the GOP that if they don't maintain the House, he will get impeached. To which I would say Democrats should prepare for anything but. Don't go down that road again. Obviously, you're never going to have enough votes in the Senate to do it. So doing it is sort of an exercise in futility. I think there are better ways if you maintain the House to gum up his actions or to at least make a show of gumming up his actions, which is really about all Democrats have had at their disposal for the first year or so of his presidency anyway. But make the case that it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about the acolytes around him that are enabling him to get away with what he is doing. You have to make the case he's being used by nefarious people in his orbit. Sinister folks. He's being used as a useful, doddering idiot that those 77 million voters who voted for him follow like rats did the Pied Piper. He is still useful in that realm. I've given a lot of time on this show to MAGA voters and the hypocrisy of what it is that they want versus what it is that they get. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a great example of the MAGA voter who thought she was getting something and wound up realizing, oh, this guy's just a self-serving narcissist. And I fell victim to toting water for him. And he wasn't America first. He wasn't this. He wasn't that. He's obviously not interested in releasing the Epstein files in full transparency, et cetera, and so on. Jay Bookman writes in the Georgia Recorder, let's dive into this. I have a recurring nightmare. He says, a nightmare that becomes more realistic with each passing day. It goes like this. It's November 2026. Here in Georgia and elsewhere, the midterm polls have been looking bad for Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans. But the ballots have finally been cast and are being counted. Tensions are high. That's when President Trump sends the National Guard or ICE agents to Fulton County, DeKalb County, and other blue trending areas claiming massive fraud, seizing voting machines, and voiding the election. It sounds too crazy to be plausible. I'd like to think so too, Bookman writes. He says, but let me ask, is that scenario more crazy than what happened 5 years ago when Trump summoned thousands of supporters to charge the Capitol, also in an effort to overturn the election? Is it more crazy than trying to seize Greenland by force? Is it more crazy than what is happening in Minnesota? My God, have you been watching Minnesota? Donald Trump is now threatening to use military force in Minneapolis to quell protests, even the legal ones. Most of them are. Bookman continues, are we moving away from chaos or hurtling at it? And it's clearly on Trump's mind as well. Last month, in a meeting with House Republicans, he expressed disbelief that Democrats might triumph in the midterm, suggesting it's only because of fraud. Bookman then invokes this quote.
Yeah, we have to even run against these people. Now, I won't say cancel the election. They should cancel the election because the fake news will say, he wants the elections canceled. He's a dictator. They always call me a dictator.
Back to Jay Bookman. In a recent interview with the New York Times, Trump was reminded that in 2020, he had explored using the National Guard to seize ballot boxes in states where he'd alleged fraud, to which he said, well, I should have. Trump went on to tell the Times that he balked at using the National Guard in 2020, not because he lacked the authority, but because he didn't think the Guard was, quote, sophisticated enough to pull it off. No, that's why you have to have people go into the dark of night at Coffee County to steal election data and software. I should mention that's me talking, not Jay Bookman. However, back to Bookman. He had already tried to pressure the Department of Justice to seize state voting machines, but Attorney General William Barr had refused. Through Rudy Giuliani, Trump then reached out to the Department of Homeland Security to seize machines, but DHS officials also told him that they had no authority to do so. Doesn't that just make you wax nostalgic for the era when there were guardrails? There are no guardrails anymore. I said that was going to be the case during the 2024 election cycle, and that's where we are now. Bookman continues, somehow I think Trump's request would get a very different response this time from the likes of Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, and Kristi Noem. Exactly. Indeed, when asked by Times reporters whether he would consider such a step in 2026, Trump just changed the subject. However, let me pivot now to a Reuters piece. James Oliphant getting 30 minutes with the president. The president expressed frustration that his Republican Party could lose control of the U.S. House of Representatives or the Senate in this year's midterm elections. I would say and. Citing historical trends that have seen the party in power lose seats in the second year of presidency. It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, Trump says, you don't win the midterms. He boasted that he had accomplished so much that, quote, when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. Excuse me? Back to the Bookman piece in the Georgia Recorder. Of course, I'll include all of these in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Bookman says, in those previous requests to seize election equipment, Trump had reportedly focused his attention on a specific but unknown state. A state that, quote, had used machines built by Dominion voting systems, whereas lawyers believe there had been fraud. Georgia uses Dominion voting machines, Bookman correctly asserts. Dominion was acquired by Missouri-based Liberty Vote in 2025. In recent social media posts, Trump had continued to rail against voting machines, voting by mail, counting votes beyond midnight of Election Day, and the use of QR codes, all of which are standard features in Georgia elections. Did I mention Dana Barrett, who's running for Secretary of State, is going to be on the show in a little bit? Anyway, Bookman continues. He's even issued executive orders that claim to abolish such standard features of election operation. In his mind, apparently, that makes it illegal. According to the Constitution, of course, states are empowered to run their own elections, but the Constitution, as it is written on paper, is often not the Constitution as recognized by Trump. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes, Trump wrote recently on his social media platform. They must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tell them, all caps, for the good of our country, to do. Remember when Republicans were about states' rights and limited federal incursions or intrusions into state affairs? I think that mostly seemed to only matter to MAGAs and Republicans for the last half century when it came to civil rights, because we've seen what conservatives have done to the Civil Rights Act in recent years. And while it should send chills down even MAGA voters' spines about the idea of a president insisting that states adhere to federal protocol, despite what the Constitution says, as long as the preferred person or party is in power, they're okay with it. They would howl like scalded dogs if it were a Democrat. If President Ocasio-Cortez wanted to do this, oh my God, those Second Amendment folks that we've been waiting to show up to stand up to ICE, because that's what they said that they needed to have all those weapons and ammo for, right? To stand up to federal overreach. Where are they? Back to Bookman, who will join us shortly. And what does the President of the United States tell them is for? The good of the country? He tells them, the mail-in ballot hoax using voting machines that are a complete and total disaster must end now, all caps. 3 exclamation points. Remember, without fair and honest elections and strong and powerful borders, you don't even have a semblance of a country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. 3 exclamation points. So no, Bookman says, while I don't think it is likely, I also do not believe it unfathomable that Trump might claim fraud and dispatch heavily armored, masked federal agents to interrupt vote counting here in Georgia and in other swing states as well. Unthinkable things are happening every day, he writes. He joins us when the Ron Show returns on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Jay Bookman from the Georgia Recorder joins us. Your somewhat dystopian piece in the Georgia Recorder was great fodder for this first segment, but you add to it what he said in the New York Times. You add to it what he insinuated in Reuters, that when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. This is what those in the movie and TV and book writing industry would call foreshadowing. Is it not? I mean, I feel like we're in one of those movies where we're seeing the early scenes of a movie that's setting us up for the dystopian part.
Well, we've seen this pattern from Trump over and over, where he drops these little hints, and it's everybody interprets. Oh, that's kind of funny. He'll never try that. And then he drops another one, and then pretty soon, we're about to invade Greenland. I mean, this is he softens people up by mentioning it. He's trying. He telegraphs what he's going to do. So if you take that pattern, well-established pattern of behavior, and then you graft it onto what he's saying now about the midterms, and it becomes deeply troubling.
The whole notion that, by the way, he is advocating for a federal incursion into state elections at his behest runs counter to everything that conservative and Republicans have been telling us about fighting for states' rights. Well, I guess going back to the Civil War. Or their rationale for the Civil War. Like, state rights were a thing, and now it's not necessarily a thing with them on this matter.
It goes back to John C. Calhoun in the 1830s.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole argument about states could refuse to honor a federal law. It's been so, yeah.
It seems as if, though,
nullification. Yes, that was
in our lifetime that only seemed to be an issue for Republicans now when it came to civil rights. I think in our lifetimes.
Pretty much, yes.
When I say civil rights, I mean just anything along a racial or measure of equality or equity or anything like that, which we've seen,
yes.
In this era that they don't like those two words. I keep thinking of this quote from Thomas Jefferson back in 1776, where he says, he sent swarms of officers to harass our people. He has kept among us standing armies without consent of our legislatures, quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, protecting them from punishment for murders which they commit on the inhabitants. It's
check.
Yeah, it's eerie, right? Like, this is all stuff that we've been through before as a country and act as if we celebrate in our history textbooks, while, of course, leaving out the ugly parts that they don't like to put in the textbooks.
The historic patterns are deeply troubling, and not just American history, but history of other countries as well.
Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing happening now in Minnesota, and what Donald Trump is threatening to do by invoking the military in Minnesota, to me is also troubling, because it's a blue state in a blue city, or with a blue city at the center of it, and Georgia's not yet. And I think, if I had to guess, the one reason why we haven't had anything of that scale here in this state is because we have GOP leadership. But let's fast forward to January or February of next year, when Governor Jason Estevez and Lieutenant Governor, we'll just go with a Democratic slate, is sworn in. And all of a sudden, we're not the red state anymore, but we are another one of those liberal, radicalized blue states that we're going to see more ICE in. Does that worry you? Because it worries me.
Well, I'm worried that we won't get to the point where we can have a governor, Jason Estevez, because Trump is signaling repeatedly in multiple ways that he's open to canceling the election by some means. I mean, as Colin points out, in 2020, he was exploring ways to get the National Guard to seize machines, voting machines. He asked the Department of Justice to go in and stop the vote counting. He explored getting Homeland Security to do so. And those folks told him no. William Barr told him no. Well, Pam Bondi's not going to tell him no.
No.
So we're living in extremely dangerous times.
And talk about, I think you can do this from a historical perspective. Talk about the visuals of having, say, even just National Guard troops or ICE agents guarding polling precincts.
Well, that's an evocation of armed people at the polls during Jim Crow and all that. Yeah, that's disturbing, especially ICE agents. Yes, I mean, because they aren't just picking off, as we know, quote, illegal immigrants. Anybody with a brown face is subject to being assaulted, arrested, thrown into the back of a vehicle and disappeared. Some of them appear, hours later, 20 miles away. But they're being disappeared.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that would be very intimidating.
And when you think about it, we just saw a mayoral election in Miami where they had Republican governance for quite a while, and Democrats flipped Miami. Democrats are flipping districts and even state legislator seats where there is a Hispanic American vote that he has lost a lot of since all of this ICE activity of the last year. I could see where that might be a useful tool of intimidation. And again, with a Congress that just seems to show no spine to stand up to him, as long as there is still juice in the berry, as long as he is still useful enough to the mechanism, to the folks around him that I think are actually using this doddering old idiot to push through the Project 2025 mission, I think this is going to be a problem.
Yes. Clearly, I mean, they are following the thing is they're telling us what they're going to do.
Yeah,
I mean, and then they're doing it, and people act shocked that they've done it, and it's like, well, as the Republicans are loving to say, this is what I voted for.
Yeah, no, I do see a lot of that on social media. People who are, they're faceless trolls probably, but I do see a lot of that on social media. I saw someone the other day, and I can't remember who it was, quoted. He or she said something along the lines of, we've envisioned this state v. state civil war sort of scenario, and I don't think that that's what we can expect. I think we are seeing what an American civil war in this genre, in this generation, would look like. Would you agree with that?
To a degree, I would, yes, because you also see it in the spending decisions, the unilateral decision to, in Lauren Boebert's, the water projects in Lauren Boebert's district in Colorado killed because they won't turn over, what's her name? The election clerk.
The election
Tina
clerk.
Peters.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Wouldn't partner,
wouldn't release her. So, so he's warring against Colorado, all of Colorado, even the conservative parts are being denied the water projects, and he's doing it. He has no constitutional ability to do so, yet he is doing so.
Yeah,
and then you can repeat that in a whole range of endeavors.
Oh yeah, I mean, imagine if Minnesota were to somehow be able to try the gunman in the Renee Good scenario. I mean, the investigation was swept up right away by the FBI without the state or the city's involvement. But yeah, I mean, if they were to try that officer and then he wanted to pardon that guy, that would be yet another scenario where Donald Trump would declare war almost literally on Minnesota if he haven't kind of already done that now.
Yes. And we're because of the big beautiful bill, we're going to get, I forget what the exact number is, but 10 or 12,000 additional ICE personnel.
Yeah, a doubling of this, what seems like almost like a private wing of a military service that he can use at his beck and call.
And these are not temporary hires. These are permanent hires.
Yeah, with signing bonuses and all. I mean, it's fantastic. Like, I'm in a position where, like, fiscally, I could use $50,000. But we're going to speak with Laura Jadid about her signing up to join ICE and just how easy it was for her to be accepted. By the way, she'll be on the show, I believe, early next week. Can't wait to share that with you. Anyway, Jay Bookman, your piece in the Georgia Recorder. We'll share it in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate that.
No problem. Appreciate talking with you.
This is The Ron Show.
I'm joined by Dana Barrett, Fulton County Commissioner, who now has higher aspirations. She's seeking to run for Georgia's Secretary of State's office. And, okay, no big deal, but you've already been fighting for voter rights, voter privacy rights, et cetera, and so on in your role as Fulton County Commissioner. And by the way, what is the latest on that? The DOJ, Trump administration, they seem to want a lot from Fulton County's election board with regards to 2020 data still. We're still in 2026 talking about 2020. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, there's so much going on right now. First of all, thank you for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it. So there's a couple things going on. First of all, we've got, as you said, the DOJ asking for the 2020 records. Why they can't just sort of let that go already. I think the public has very much moved on, but Trump just cannot let go. I think part of it is just a personal thing for him. He just can't stand that he lost in Georgia, and he just wants to keep refighting that fight, which is nonsense and a waste of government money, certainly, and energy. But I also think it's likely part of a bigger scheme to undermine Georgia's elections across the board, to say, look, elections don't work in Georgia. See what we found here. See what we dug up or manufactured or created. Elections don't work. Therefore, either the federal government should not have elections at all, and we'll declare an elections emergency and say it can't be done, or we'll say Georgia elections have to be taken over by the state. And I think those are two very possible reasons that is happening.
Okay, but I think we can all agree that there were some miscounting issues. There were, do-overs, duplications, et cetera, and so on. Why wouldn't it just be expedient to call their bluff and say, you know what? We're willing to do this. We want a third party brought in, someone who is nonpartisan, to weigh in on this for the last time and get this over with, just to sort of kneecap any of those schemes that you were talking about, to sort of make it look like Fulton County is some nefarious place where elections are being stolen. Just bring it all out in the open. Use a nonpartisan third party organization of some sort to oversee this. I don't care if it's the United Nations, the Carter Center's right here. To just do that and get it out of the way so that we can just shut up about 2020 and get on.
Well, you're saying that like this would be the last time. So,
but if you brought in a nonpartisan organization, would that not seal it? I mean,
but it's been done already. It's been done multiple times. There's been all kinds of investigations, research.
Sure.
Secretary of State's office, county. It's been litigated. And while you are not incorrect to say that there were some things that weren't perfect, there was nothing that would have changed the outcome of the election. And there was nothing nefarious. That's been proven over and over and over again. And
right.
This is frankly just a distraction by the Trump administration, and us engaging with it is giving it oxygen it doesn't deserve.
But you do agree, though, that there were like serious issues with like double counting and triple counting of ballots and initial counts that had to be rectified, and the Trump campaign's mistake, and I feel like it was almost on purpose, was not to ask for what was allowed to them by state law, which was a hand recount. They'd never ask for that, and I think that's on purpose, to keep that cloud of concern or not to get to the bottom line, but to keep having this as a political football to use. Why not just say, you know what, you didn't ask for this, but we're going to grant this, and then we're going to be done with it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I hear what you're saying, but I actually think we have to move on and focus on other things. And I think this is one of those moments where I think no matter what they actually got out of it, no matter what was actually reported or said or who did the counting, it's going to be twisted again, no matter what, which has been every single time to say Fulton County did something wrong. And we're going to point to this error that, as you mentioned, something was double counted, somebody didn't sign something. There were errors, but they were within the margin of normal error for any county in any state, anywhere. That's the bigger point. And, giving into these bully tactics is just not something we ever need to do.
Unfortunately, in the Trump decade, it's been a decade now of his era in governance. It doesn't go away. He's like a dog with a chew toy. He's not going to let go of it until the chew toy is done away with. And that's, to me, where, like, if you just do the hand recount with some nonpartisan third party, just get it over with, then he doesn't have the chew toy anymore. And he's got to focus on other things. And we can focus on other things, which is what we ought to be doing.
I hear you, but Ron, can I just say windmills? Like,
I know.
Never going to stop.
Yes, exactly. Windmills, Greenland, Venezuela. I mean, there's all sorts of other chew toys for him to focus on if we could just put this one to bed. And it's not even as if, say, the outcome did change, and I don't believe it would. I don't think there'd be any sort of discrepancies or changes in numbers. Say it did alter the 2020 result for Georgia. He still lost the Electoral College. That's why, for me, it's like, just get it over with. I don't care one way or the other. Let's just get the exact right number with some nonpartisan entity overseeing this, and then we just move on.
Listen, I appreciate that you are, hopeful that somehow this could be put to bed. I'm not sure I believe that. And I think that's where we differ. I think I hear what you're saying. We could do that. And most people who already believe it was fine would also still believe it was fine. And MAGA will not believe it was fine. And they will never believe it's fine. And they won't put it to bed.
But don't you think that is something that we can sort of work on election integrity and belief in the system by convincing everyone without a doubt, listen, nothing was done to change the outcome. Let's just get that out in the open and move on and not worry about 2026. Now we've got folks on the left who are worried about the outcome being tainted by the Trump administration and their nefarious efforts here with the DOJ, using that as his own personal law firm. We just get that all out in the open and show, listen, you guys had all these conspiracy theories, but none of them bore fruit, none of them. And we've showed that, we proved that. Valid in the open with that nonpartisan entity that I keep bringing up.
I think it's more important, honestly, to focus on what's been done since 2020, because Fulton County has since then opened a state-of-the-art consolidated voting warehouse where all the counting takes place that has, set up places for observers to watch. When the 2024 election happened, I was there that night. We had cameras from all over the world in that space, filming what was going on, watching the votes come in, watching them be counted, watching tallies. We have whatever inconsistencies there may have been, which again, I will continue to reiterate, were in the margin of error. We now have a system that is so tight in Fulton County and so well run. And I'm sure you'll find it, not interesting at all that there was no complaint about our elections in 2024.
Right.
Well, I wonder why that was.
Yeah, or at all with any of the other candidates on the ballot in 2020 either. No, I'm with you 1,000%. But that's why it's, for me, it's like thump the nose of this dog with his chew toy and just move on because there's other things to gnaw on.
Yeah, I get you.
So, as a Fulton County Board Commissioner, you have been, somewhat in the middle of the fray on a lot of these issues, even at odds with seating folks on the Fulton County Election Board who I think you made the valid argument weren't qualified for the position. But if you win this role, if you win this position, you're going to be dealing with a state election board that is MAGA filled. How do you make that work?
Well, I think, one of the issues with the current administration in terms of Secretary of State is that they allowed that to happen. That role, the Secretary of State should be sitting on that elections board and should have a say. And that was given away, essentially, or allowed to be taken away by the current Secretary of State's office. And that's a shame. I think, now unwinding that is going to be very challenging, but I think we have to. I think one of the other things that the Secretary of State's office could be doing that they haven't been doing is using the platform to speak up about it. Well, okay, I'm not on the state elections board, but I can talk about what they are doing and the decisions they are making, not only within my own office and to state legislature, but to the public.
Well, you and I both know why they're not doing that. You've got Gabriel Sterling, who's running on the opposite side for for the same role, and you've got Brad Raffensperger running for governor. The more they go out and talk about this, the more it pisses off the MAGA base, and that hinders their chances of winning these races that they're trying to win as well.
Of course, and I think that's all the more reason it makes a lot more sense to have somebody like me who has the experience and the background and who has proven that I will stand up and say the truth. And regardless of anybody's influence, I'm not going to be influenced by whoever is president or governor or whatever else. I'm going to do my job. I've been doing it that way and standing up to the chairman in Fulton County when I need to, standing up to the Fulton County Republican Party when I need to. I was willing to go to jail to make sure, that we did not have MAGA election deniers interfering in our elections. And so this is the kind of fight we need in that office, not this, mealy-mouthed halfway thing that Gabe Sterling is doing and Brad Raffensperger is doing, which is like, okay, well, I'm going to do the right thing, but then I'm going to be quiet about it because I don't want to upset MAGA. Well, I want to upset MAGA. I'm fine with upsetting MAGA. That's fine.
So here we are entering into another election cycle here in the state of Georgia, where the potential for the Secretary of State to oversee his own election, if he were to win the nomination for governor, could happen again. That happened with Brian Kemp in 2018, infamously, and he narrowly won, we assume. What are your thoughts on that? Should there be some sort of legislation drawn that prevents that from happening ever again?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging one because if a Secretary of State ever runs for any higher office or any other office, then that is what happens. There probably needs to be some internal check and balance within that office. Mm-hmm. But, I'd have to give that some more thought to come up with what the real plan should be there. And it is relatively rare. Yeah. I think it's worth noting. I think you're right to bring it up. But and I think there's probably a way to put some guardrails in that specific situation so that there is not any kind of a direct control.
Yeah, there was no mechanism for that in 2018, obviously, but it's not as if, again, it's not as if Brian Kemp wasn't aware what he was going to do in time enough to help concoct something that had him step aside so that it didn't present any appearance of impropriety.
I think it also speaks to the procedures and the technology that the Secretary of State's office has in place, and us sort of just being transparent about how that all works. Because the Secretary of State, let's be honest, they are an elected official and should not have their hands in anybody's election, whether it's their own or anybody else's. They should not have their hands directly in that data, period. So I think, I think the systems are in place to make sure that happens. We just need to be explaining that to people better so they understand. It's not like the Secretary of State is going to be weeding through a box of votes and saying, okay, I'm taking these out and put these in, So I think this gets to the whole issue we're having right now with people undermining elections from the right. And people buy these kinds of narratives because they just don't really understand how it all works.
Yeah, and it is a complicated job. It is a complicated job to oversee state elections and coordinating with counties who coordinate with precincts and changes of custody. Listen, I've had several conversations with election advocates, and it's mind-numbing. It really is. And I can see why it's easy for the conspiracy theorists to continue to flourish in the darkness, like mold. And let things fester when most of the voting public just isn't aware of what all goes on. I wanted to bring it. I hate to keep going back to 2020, but I do want to bring up the conversation of election security because there are valid questions about software breaches. Who has their hands on that? We are still working with Dominion software despite the Coffee County election breach. It feels a lot of experts say that we are still very vulnerable to result hacking altogether. In fact, the Coalition for Good Governance did a live stream a few weeks ago where they had a couple of election experts on and literally showed them how results can be changed. Are you concerned about that? And if elected, what would you do to address those concerns?
I mean, of course I'm concerned. Anything that makes our elections not secure is concerning. I think we have some basics in place, but I do think, and I just went through a cyber attack in Fulton County and a ransomware attack and worked through a year of putting cybersecurity measures in place to make sure we know how to protect ourselves from having that happen again. I think we need more of that in the election system. It's the kind of thing where you can't really talk so much about it when you do it because you don't want anyone to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think we need, and I have a background in technology. I started out as a self-taught programmer and worked my way up to a vice president of technology. So I've run these tech shops. When I got into the media, I did a lot of interviews with cybersecurity folks. So I know that industry pretty well. There's some great tools out there. And then I had the opportunity to sort of use that experience and learn the government side of it when Fulton County went through the attack. So I think the key there is to really beef up the efforts on cybersecurity, to give the public assurance and to have the assurance myself that those things are, you never can say it will never happen, but that you have everything in place to stop it. And then if something were to happen, if something were to break through your defenses, that you are prepared immediately to respond, to cut it off, to make sure any bad actors are out of the system, and also to have the right sort of separation of data and data storage so that you can restore back to where you were. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done there. And I certainly believe I'm the only one with the background both in protecting our elections and on the technology side to do that work.
We're with Fulton County Commissioner Dana Barrett. Yes, that Dana Barrett, who, along with another commissioner, defied a judge's order refusing to approve 2 GOP nominees to the county election board that she believes were election deniers. Now, a judge had levied a $10,000 fine against the entire board, but those fines are on hold while an appeal is being considered. So she's been in the fight when it comes to voter integrity in her current role. However, she wants to take that to another level as your Secretary of State. We'll continue our conversation with Dana when the Ron Show returns. Thank you for listening, whether it's on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. A few more minutes with Fulton County Commissioner Dana Barrett, former radio show host herself, by the way. She's got a little background in media. She's running for Georgia's Secretary of State. We've had some tough questions about election integrity, election security, looking back at 2020 as well. Let's talk a little bit about the way we vote and security and privacy, though. What are your thoughts on the state continuing to use these QR code ballots without seeing results, et cetera? There seems to be a healthy push. And it's funny, it's as if the push came from the right initially, and now you're seeing those on the left as well who believe that we should return to hand-marked paper ballots. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it kind of gets back to the first conversation we were having, Ron, where we were talking about sort of trying to undo a marketing campaign. Like, we as modern humans use technology for everything.
Yes.
And this seems to be the one arena in which we have like this intense doubt. And yes, it's a hugely important arena, but we trust our banking information to technology. We trust our health information to technology. I just put myself in my daughter's shoes, and I think the younger folks are saying, you guys you want us to fill in circles on what is that? What are you even talking about? Like, what's a pencil? What do you even mean? Yeah. We do everything on technology. Why can't you guys just make the technology work? That said, there is a lot of insecurity and doubt from people who just see a QR code and they're not sure that what they just put in the machine is what they're then feeding into the scanner. Mm-hmm. And so I think, what we really need to look at is a recountable receipt that has your votes on it, and let people see that. And it can be both, right? It can be yes, and it can be a QR code and the actual receipt of what you voted for on the piece of paper. And I think that is probably the direction we need to go in. Now, there's been talk also, about having the printout basically be the bubble form that can be scanned in and machine read. I think there's maybe something there, although the cost to do that is going to be a little more expensive. But I think at the end of the day, we need to take all of the options into consideration that will both be the best to get the votes counted and also help give the citizens the most assurance that it's working.
So I think this also takes me to the privacy question, because while this may not be an issue in Fulton County, it's definitely an issue in smaller communities where folks can be unduly influenced by, say, their minister, a local sheriff's deputy, or the sheriff, even a spouse intimidating someone to vote a certain way. And the way these machines tend to be set up, anybody walking behind somebody can sort of make out what's happening. There's no privacy. We're not in a private booth. These machines are propped up. They're lit up. The talk about moving to a hand-marked paper ballot with a 3-sided partition at least offers some sort of privacy concerns. Do you have any concern about privacy issues that should be addressed with the current system?
I think, well, moving to a hand-marked paper ballot, I think just opens up so many other issues. And, that's a whole other conversation, right? But, if you don't completely fill out the bubble, or what if you change your mind and you draw an X through it? What does that mean? I mean, there's so many things that can happen with the hand-marked paper ballots just because you're now looking down and people can't really, like you're almost like back in school covering your paper and people can't see it, that somehow that makes it safer. And I get what you're saying. If somebody is determined to see what another voter is doing, they could, and they were able to get behind there without any of the polling folks noticing it. But I also think there are things that can be done to make the screens less accessible if we need, less visual. The setups of the room could be more specified. I think there are other things we can do to not, throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I think we can continue to use a technology solution, but make sure that the booth itself is more private. Because I remember the days when you used to walk in and there were curtains. You were in private. And so why not go back to something like that? We can still have the machine, but we can just improve the privacy around each machine.
We've talked a lot about some wonky stuff. The Coffee County breach. If you're elected, what are your recommendations? Should there be some sort of criminal? I mean, a lot of the folks that got away with, cases that they were being investigated for in the Fulton County case went by the wayside. So is there any recourse?
That is a really good question about whether or not there's recourse. Should there be? Yes. What is going to be allowed based on the current makeup of the state legislature, the state courts, the judges that are in place. I know obviously there are prosecutors that care about prosecuting these cases, but as we saw in Fulton County, that doesn't get us all the way there. And there should be recourse. And I think we all should care enough about that to demand it. But whether or not we can actually get it remains to be seen.
My last question to you is, the last 2 secretaries of states have done a lot to purge voter rolls, and there's been questions about, voter rights, handing out water in lines. What would you do from that bully pulpit to turn back a lot of that and to ensure that folks' rights to vote are protected from the office instead of constantly up for scrutiny every few years if they didn't or they decided not to vote, which oftentimes is a vote in and of itself. Not participation is the same thing as voting in some cases for some folks?
Yeah, I think we really just need to keep in mind that all of this work to purge the voter rolls is deliberate. There is a concerted effort to disenfranchise voters by the folks on the right. And while our current Secretary of State's office has, did the bare minimum by not breaking the law, maybe a little more, but we're talking about not breaking the law. They've done that. But they all were happily supporting Senate Bill 202, which you referenced, that took away a lot of voting rights, that took away mobile voting, that lessened the number of days people can early vote, and on and on and on, right? So I think we have to really be focused on how do we restore even back to just where we were, let alone making it better in terms of access, because we should be in a state where every county has the resources to run secure elections and where every citizen who is eligible to vote can go and vote. And this purging of the voter rolls is just another way to stand in between a citizen and their right to have a voice in what is happening in this country.
And it's so transparent. It disproportionately affects voters of color and marginalized voters. It's so transparent.
People who work two jobs can't go down there to defend their registration. Seniors who can't get a ride can't go defend their registration. I mean, these are the kinds of things that they want to have happen, and we cannot allow to have happen.
All right, Dana Barrett wants to be the next Secretary of State. She's got to win the Democratic primary first. I want to thank you so much for giving me some time today. I know these questions were tough and somewhat acrimonious, but iron sharpens iron, right? You'll come out of this better.
There you go. I appreciate the hard questions. Thank you for having me.
All right, appreciate it. This is The Ron Show on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
From the heart of the city too busy to hate, a progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you so much for listening. Georgia Now, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., 8 to 10 a.m. the following morning on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. Second half of the show today, bottom of the hour, we will talk with Chris Harden, who is running to be the Democratic nominee up against Barry Wolfert and Chase Limanak. That is a primary that should be hotly contested in a majority Republican or a very right-leaning district, Barry Loudermilk. That'll give you the idea. He is currently holding that seat. Anyway, we'll talk with Chris Harden and find out why he thinks he's got a fantastic opportunity. Good story out of him too. He, raised in rural Georgia poverty and made his way to Georgia State University, got his law degree, and has been working the hard work and makes I think a compelling argument for why he could be the kind of nominee that the Democratic Party needs to win a congressional district like the 11th. Today was a big day on the Georgia Capitol. We have, of course, the State of the State address from one Brian Kemp. In years past, I've given you the audio to that, and I just don't think I'm going to do that today. Mostly because, I don't know, I only have a little bit of, between Dana Barrett and Jay Bookman and Chris Harden, I just didn't have the 45 minutes to an hour of time, I forget how long his speech went, to give you the meat and potatoes, all of the buffet, I guess I would say, of that speech. Let me give you a little bit of just a sampling, a nugget, if you will, of this.
These important investments, tax cuts, rebates, and record state reserves would not be possible without the drive and hard work of millions of Georgians who get up every day and do the best they can to provide for themselves and their families. They go to work chasing the American dream, hoping to earn an honest living and leave their kids and their grandkids better than they had it. That's the American spirit. That's the spirit of what it means to be a Georgian. When I launched my campaign for governor, it was about promising those hardworking Georgians that I would fight for them every day, whether they voted for me or not, Republican or Democrat, or something in between. My goal was to make a positive difference in their lives. As a small business owner and a construction guy, I believe so much good can come from an honest day's work at a job that pays a good wage. And I believe in what that job can do not only for that employee, but also for their family and that community. And that's why my administration from day one has prioritized economic development, job creation, and bringing investment to all four corners of our state.
House Minority Leader Carolyn Hughley and Representative Sam Park went before the media to give something of a Democratic response with a little bit of a Q&A before she did an official response via social media.
The most exciting thing I heard was the DREAM program, because we've been asking for need-based scholarships for years. And as you know, Hope started out as a need-based proposition, and they turned it into a merit-based scholarships. So I'm happy that on his way out the door, he's given a nod to something that we've been asking for several years.
Let's go to that portion of the speech.
Along with these unprecedented investments, Georgia is truly the national leader in merit-based aid for higher education between the Hope Scholarship and grant programs. But in this era of high prices and new challenges for those graduating from high school, we also recognize the advantage that need-based financial assistance can give to those who would not otherwise be able to access higher education. Like their peers who have the means to attend college, these students have great dreams for rewarding careers and impactful lives. But they don't always have hope that those dreams can become a reality. Dreams without the benefit of hope remain dreams deferred, perhaps for entire generations. How much richer would the lives of those and their families be if they could attain the type of education that leads to a high-paying job with great benefits? And how much would communities across our state benefit from these young people getting a degree that opens their door or starts a rewarding career? I believe we owe it to every child to ensure they start out on a level playing field, no matter their zip code.
That's new.
Therefore, my amended budget proposal invests $325 million in the University System of Georgia's Dream Scholarship Program, the first need-based scholarship of its kind in Georgia history.
I'm thinking this got his loudest applause, too, because it was bipartisan.
In future years, this one-time endowment will create opportunities for generational economic advancement for thousands of students. And down the road, it will allow them to complete college and begin meaningful careers without the burden of crippling debt. The Dream Scholarship will build on the incredible, unmatched legacy of the Hope Scholarship and leave no stone unturned when it comes to student achievement in our state. From now on, throughout the country, Americans will know that hopes and dreams are alive right here in the great state of Georgia.
Let's go to some more questions that Representative Hughley and Sam Park was there but didn't chime in or didn't get to. Anyway, let's take a listen to another question.
Do you support the governor using a good portion of the state's surplus to return some of that to taxpayers?
This is what we need to think about. We need to really, really look at what we're doing. He says $250 or $500.
Thank you.
Of course, that will not take care of the needs that most families are thinking about.
Right.
They're thinking about childcare. They're thinking about paying rent. But a one-time $250 and a one-time $500, what is that really going to do? Of course, we want to be as supportive as possible in this last year, but we really got to think about long-term, how we're going to continue to make Georgia a strong state. The governor's going home, but the legislature has to come back.
And here's the thing. I mean, listen, it's not that people don't like a tax rebate or a tax cut. It's that they also don't like having to blow that much or more on things to repair their vehicle, like new tires, new rims, new brakes, new shocks, new struts that supersede the $500, the pittance that you're going to get back because we're not investing in our roads, our streets, our overpasses to make sure that we don't have to prematurely replace or repair our shocks, our struts, our brakes, our tires, our rims. That to me is, again, it just seems short-sighted when we have such a long list of needs in this state. I keep going back to harping on our transportation needs, and the governor is, I say doubling down. He's quadrupling down on another lane ought to fix it. More express lanes on I-75 south of Atlanta. Listen, I-75 south of Atlanta is a quagmire. It is a bottleneck, but it already has express lanes. And so adding additional mileage of those express lanes is just a short-term solution for a long-term problem. And honestly, those lanes would be needed now, and they're not going to be ready for 5, 7, 10 years. And by then, what are we dealing with? We live in a state that has the world's busiest airport. I keep harping on it. We live in a state with the world's busiest airport, and yet we have almost no connectivity throughout the entire metro region to that airport, unless you happen to live near a MARTA station. And we know, unless you're in DeKalb or Fulton County, you do not live near a MARTA station. To me, it's just unfathomable that we're not talking about connecting at least Macon and Athens, maybe Chattanooga, and then broadening to Savannah and Columbus, over towards maybe Madison, down I-20 to Augusta, to connect these other feeder markets. And again, this is something that the state and, say, a Delta Airlines, one of the state's largest employers, could be working towards. You think Delta Airlines wouldn't like to stop doing those lost leader flights from Atlanta and Chattanooga and Columbus and Macon to Atlanta? It's so useless. By the time they're up in the air, they're back down again. That is a lot of fuel that is being spent for no reason whatsoever. to me, that is the idea of that public-private partnership that I'm just not hearing enough of, except out of one voice on the Democratic side of the ballot.
Was there anything you overlooked?
Did you hear anything about health care?
Boom.
We have been talking about expanding Medicaid year after year. And we know that the ACA subsidies have expired. There are cuts to Medicaid coming down to us from the federal government. That's a real challenge. And I'm surprised that it was not mentioned.
I'm not. I apologize now, but the next reporter asked a question that had something to do with income tax relief, and it was inaudible, but I think this was Carolyn Hughley's response to that.
Well, you know, the devil's always in the details. So we're open and we're going to look at that, but I'm not ready to sign on at this moment.
When the governor talks about healthcare, he usually talks about Georgia pathways. He didn't mention it today either. Any interpretation that you might put on that?
Well, the governor was talking about his successes today, and Georgia pathways cannot be counted in success.
Ooh. As Greg Bluestein reported from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, no sweeping new initiative unveiled on the scale of last year's civil litigation overhaul. You got that. No opening salvo in a fresh culture war fight, because they've won so much of those battles too. No revamp of his conservative vision of a limited Medicaid expansion, as Carolyn Hughley rightly twists the knife and pointed out. Instead, as Bluestein reports, Kemp signaled to his captive audience that in his final year in office, he intends to wield the most powerful tool in his political arsenal, control of the state's purse strings, as the race for his job intensifies. And as he looks toward an undeclared political trajectory after office and an unpredictable contest to succeed him, Kemp offered a cautionary note to the candidates now jockeying for his position. He did not explicitly reject Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones' 6-year plan to eliminate the state income tax and the roughly $16 billion it generates, but Kemp not so subtly indicated he favors a more measured approach when he said, "This tax cut doesn't promise to pay for itself years down the road or create future budget holes with today's one-time money." Bluestein continues, he also defended his refusal to hollow out Georgia's bulging surplus, projecting he'll leave office with about $10 billion in reserves, even after a fresh round of big-ticket spending. That's roughly 4 times what any previous administration has handed off, he mentioned. He said, "It's not a question of if hard times will hit our state again. It's simply a question of when." And then Bluestein picking up on the Georgia Dream Scholarship Program. The biggest surprise, he writes, and it was, like I heard nobody giving any scuttlebutt about this leading in. In his final year, Kemp proposed a $325 million infusion into Georgia's needs-based scholarship program, a priority Democrats have pressed for years to supplement the lottery-funded merit-based Hope Scholarship. Kemp framed it not as a concession to his critics, no, you didn't hear that, but as an extension of his business-minded agenda. He called it, remember what he said here when I played the clip, a one-time endowment that will create opportunities for generational economic advancement for thousands of students. And down the road, it will allow them to complete college and begin meaningful careers without the burden of crippling debt. Going to take a quick break. We'll pick up on this conversation. Brian Kemp's State of the State address. We'll nitpick a little bit more when the Ron Show returns. Oh, and by the way, Chris Harden running for Georgia's 11th Congressional District at the bottom of the hour on the Ron Show. It's Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I like Greg Bluestein at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Friendly, affable fella. Stay in your lane, though, buddy. He's editorializing a little bit in his piece in the aftermath of Brian Kemp's State of the State address. The lack of Republican red meat in Kemp's speech puts Democrats in a bind, he opines, instead of reports. It's hard to come out against tax cuts or infrastructure improvements or sex trafficking crackdowns in any year, but particularly an election year when affordability is all the rage. I would counter, however, that you can make valid and cogent arguments about dealing with long-time problems with long-time solutions. These short-term Band-Aids that are not fixing. For example, the city of Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, North Georgia, when it comes to our traffic woes, that is going to be at the detriment of business development in the state. And I know what you're thinking. Well, what it might mean is it might mean we spread some of the business development around. Well, we have. And you have traffic problems in Metro Augusta. You have traffic problems in Metro Savannah. Have you tried driving through Macon lately? I mean, the road construction sort of contributes a lot to that, but it's also meaning that we weren't prepared for the problem 10 years ago. What makes you think that the problems that we're trying to address now with projects that are about 10 years too late are going to be useful 10 years down the road? Greg Bluestein opines, even the response from Democratic leaders were more focused on the midterm than Kemp. Party chair Charlie Bailey said Kemp's record of, quote, failed leadership has fueled growing unrest with the GOP that will manifest at the ballot box. I don't know. I think Trump's actually going to have more of an effect that should benefit Democrats. But Charlie said, this November, Georgia voters will once again say enough to failed Republican leadership and elect a strong Democratic governor who will fight every day for them and their families. One reason for the muted agenda is simple, Bluestein says. Kemp has prevailed in nearly every major policy fight he chose to wage since taking office in 2019. That is true, and that is something that I think will, in the long term, sort of affect how history judges him. Anyway, most of his campaign vows have been checked off, Greg Bluestein correctly opines. But there's another factor at play. A grueling fight over Kemp's litigation overhaul last year tested the outer bounds of his power. With would-be successors growing bolder, lame duck status is no longer theoretical, even if Kemp reminded the audience he still has a, quote, big red pen at the ready to veto irksome legislation. Kemp also acknowledged how fleeting power can be beneath the Gold Dome, where the constant churn of political dramas can distract from overall policy goals. Bluestein said he closed with a reflection on his faith, urging lawmakers to make the most of their fleeting time in public office and finish the great work we started. He said, my family service to this state will be a small footnote in the history books. Your service under this Gold Dome will likely be the same. The reflections on faith to me are just something of interest, especially right now. We literally have flare bombs and smoke bombs going off in Minneapolis. We have a protester who is shot in the face and killed in front of her spouse, leaving children to grieve, who was literally just trying to do what I believe her faith calls her to do, which if anyone would pay attention to the word of Jesus, you would know that the immigrant was welcome, that the hardworking immigrant, that the loathsome hoarder of wealth wasn't as beloved in the eyes of Jesus. It just, this stuff sort of drives me nuts. Or if we want to talk about faith, let's talk about faiths that don't adhere to life begins at conception, that women, are due some sort of basic human right to have predetermination of their own bodily autonomy. Now, a few things that I don't want to leave out. Kemp called for $2,000 one-time bonuses for teachers. Okay, cool. That, sort of gets mitigated by tariffs. But, I mean, still, thank you, right? University and state employees included in that. That's a throwback to the signature promise from his first term that he delivered $5,000 raises for every teacher. This reporting from Dan Raby at CBS News. The governor wants to increase retirement payments to law enforcement and endow $325 million to the needs-based scholarship program. There was this a day before Kemp had announced plans to spend more than $2 billion on infrastructure improvements, most of which, as we talked about, go to toll express lanes. I don't understand, by the way. I just don't understand why this is something that Democrats could really, sink their teeth into, much like a dog on a chew toy, and just go absolutely bonkers with. Why do we need to invest money in toll roads? You're asking taxpayers to pay for something and then pay for something to use it again. That to me is something that Democrats could really make a lot of hay with. I'm not saying that you don't invest in that, but if you're going to invest, well, actually, I am saying that. If you're going to invest in that, I don't think you then make it so that only the people who can afford the tolls, the peach passes, get to use it. That is something that Democrats could sink their teeth into. A lot of working class, red voters, conservative MAGA types, aren't going to spend money to drive the peach pass because they can't afford it, or they need to put their money towards something that they deem as more beneficial. And what kind of time is it going to save them anyway? Yeah, that is something I think Democrats could sink their teeth into. Or if you're going to do that, can't you use bonds? Can't you use something else to sort of fund these lanes that you're going to try to repay on the backs of the commuters who are going to use it again, that you're already asking them to pay for it the first time, and instead maybe take that $2 billion and put it towards something that is a little more, future thinking, rapid transit, mass transit, contributing for the first time ever in the state and MARTA's history to MARTA's budget. MARTA, the largest mass transit authority in the country not to get a dime of state funding. The state of Florida, and listen, I get it. Brightline is a project. It's a public-private partnership in Florida that is having its growing pains financially speaking. But in the long term, connecting Miami to West Palm, to Melbourne, to Orlando, to Tampa, to Tallahassee is going to be a net positive for folks who don't want to have to deal with long rides on the interstate, getting stuck in gridlock in all of those cities that I mentioned and in between, when you can instead get on a train, still do work while on the train. That's right. Taking calls, Zoom meetings, reading a book, watching a show, enjoying your life a little bit while taking. Florida's doing it. If we're going to look to Florida and Tennessee as examples for getting rid of the income tax, and I know Brian Kemp's not on board with that, but if we're going to look to Florida and Tennessee for good ideas, why not look to Florida when it comes to connecting the state to its major cities, or in Georgia's case, connecting the smaller cities to Georgia's major city and the busiest airport on the planet, and taking some relief off of those interstates that you're trying to relieve with yet another additional lane project. Anyway, Chris Harden is he's a white guy. I mean, how do I say that? He's a white guy. He's got a Southern accent. He is a lawyer. So naturally you think, this sounds like a Republican running for Congress. He's running for the Democratic ticket. He wants to be the nominee for Georgia's 11th congressional district. And so that's what he's running for. We will talk with him in just a few minutes. I kind of want to feel him out and see what his prospects are. We'll do that next when the Ron returns on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725.
Okay, so while we've laid the groundwork for how the 2026 midterms elections are going to be fraught with peril because of he who must not be mentioned, but is all the freaking time, and of course, election integrity and security with Dana Barrett running for the Secretary of State's nomination for the Democratic Party primary. Let's also talk about congressional races. We have focused a lot on congressional races here in Georgia. We don't have a whole lot of competitively drawn districts by design. The Republican-led state legislature gerrymandering the snot out of this state. However, maybe there's some districts that can be flipped. And one of those that we think maybe could be flipped would be the 11th congressional district. Chris Harden is running for that seat. And I want to thank you for joining the show today, Chris. You know your
Thanks
district.
for having me, Ron.
You know your district. You know that this is not, an easy thing. We know that we've seen like 65%, support for whoever the GOP person is that can fog a mirror on that ballot. What makes you think 2026 could be different?
Well, I think this is the year to be a first-time candidate, period. I think everybody's upset with anybody who's an incumbent, whether you have a D or an R beside your name. And I think, Loudermilk's hitched his wagon to Trump, and I think that popularity is going down. I think, Congress is seeing its worst polling in a long, long time, and I haven't met anybody that actually likes Loudermilk. But, well,
that's the thing. Nobody likes Congress.
Fired up to go out.
But nobody likes Congress, but they like what they have locally.
Right. And so, I think, the CD11 is unique and it's very diverse. You've got a lot of wealth and you've got a lot of poverty. You've got some urban and suburban. There's a lot of things, and a lot of people aren't feeling heard right now. Mm-hmm. And I believe there was a bit of a blue wave in November. I know that Congress squandered that momentum, but we're hoping to get it back. And last week at the Cobb County, this last weekend at Cobb County Democratic kickoff, you could feel that momentum coming back. There was a lot of energy and a lot of optimism in that room. Given the current circumstances.
When you speak of Democrats squandering opportunity, are you talking about the government shutdown and caving on that?
That's my thought on it.
Yeah.
And we get to, I guess, run on it, but it'd been nice if we'd have gotten something out of it. They got the promise and then they broke the promise, so now we get to run on it. But I wish that would have been a promise that would have been kept. But I guess the Congress kept their promise. The Senate, let us down. Mm-hmm. But we're going to fix it though. We'll get in there and fix it.
Give us a little bit of your background. What is it that has you primed? What is it that makes you think you are prepared to step into this role?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm from North Georgia. If you couldn't tell by the accent.
That's not a fake accent either, right? Like Brian Kemp can pull out the fake accent at a drop of a hat, but this is you, right?
Yeah, man. This is how I talk. I didn't realize I talked like that till I went to school at Georgia State and in Atlanta, and then they started calling me Big Country, and I'm like, wow,
yeah,
you got an accent. But I went to Georgia State political science pre-law with a minor in history, and then I went to law school, and now I've been practicing law for over about 14 years now, and so just all of that I think has prepared me for this run. I know how to read law, write law, and we can, all I do is in my spare time is study history and what's going on in the news. So it got to a point where last year, especially around this time last year, where all those emotions started hitting us, the anger, the anxiety, the depression, and just had to start doing something. And my wife was like, why don't you run for something? I'm like, we should do that.
Wow.
We should totally do that. Yeah. That's a lot since we have triplets. So
yeah,
so
here
we are.
But talk a little bit about that. Like you're raising a family with triplets, health insurance premiums, altered for a lot of folks, and not just those who are on ACA subsidies. Folks who have health insurance, period, found themselves affected by rate changes. Was your family directly impacted by this?
Absolutely. I don't know anybody that said, hey, our premiums went down, and it wasn't like that was the only cost that went up. Everything has been going up, utilities, groceries. I'm telling you, I might have to take out a loan just to pay for the fruit for my kids,
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the elephant in the room. You do not sound like or look like or talk like or probably even walk like the prototypical Democratic candidate because, again, you're a Walker County, Georgia boy. Talk to me about the necessity of we talk about representation, right? We talk about representation a lot in the Democratic circles and diversity and equity. Talk to me about the necessity of representation for the young white male in the Democratic Party, though. Not to put anybody else to the side, but it ain't like we've got folks running for that same seat on the primary in your congressional district anyway that would run counter to that. But talk to me about the necessity of hearing from those white male voices in the Democratic Party, but are talking the lingo of the party platform.
Well, I'll just speak for myself, which is if you go look at my team that I have a lot of women that are helping me, on my team. It's a very, very diverse campaign team. And I feel like I owe it, people can listen to me a little bit easier than some others, right? And I want to deliver the message that's palatable to the CD11. I think that I don't think Barry Loudermilk has faced somebody like me who comes from Georgia, who sounds like and looks like. I always tell people I may sound and look MAGA, but I promise I'm not. And I know the people are a little jaded since the last time somebody ran. There was a little tomfoolery going on there, but no, I want to be an advocate for the people that are struggling to get their voice heard because of the climate that it is right now. And I wanted to show that there is another perspective of a white male that you can trust and you can rely on. And that's what I want to be for my team. And, I want to show that there are white male. You don't have to always choose the bear. You can choose me. So,
do you even have a red hat in your arsenal? See, I'm a Georgia fan, so I've got red hats. I don't even trot them out anymore because they're too red.
I'll be honest. My family is from Alabama.
Oh,
I'm not.
Stop
I'm from
That's
Georgia.
It. You're trying to win an election here, my man. Yeah,
but I'm gonna tell you, I'm an Auburn fan.
Even worse, my God. Stop it! I just see the poll numbers descending.
You know what's funny about that is my campaign manager, she is a Georgia fan, and she wanted to do a fundraiser where we like, hey, you're watching Georgia, and she put Go Dogs. I'm like, we're not posting that one. I'm sorry. Anybody that knows me knows that I'll be disingenuous if I post something about Go Dogs. But SEC all the way. SEC all the way.
Okay, I can appreciate that you don't pander. That's something that we see way too much of in politics. You say in your profile here that you are a moderate Democrat who believes in results, not rhetoric. What do you mean by that? Let's dive into that. I want to hear you.
Well, I think a lot of the things that we're going to need to rely on is some market solutions. I think that's what might make me more of a moderate, because on social issues, I'm extremely liberal. But I think a lot of these things like healthcare and the affordability and all the things that we've been talking about, we're going to need some market solutions for those, and along with some government assistance, to help make sure that our safety nets are in place, but also encourage some movement in the markets to help us with like housing. We need to increase the supply side of things, right? So we need to incentivize people, to build more houses, while at the same time trying to restrict Wall Street from getting into Main Street, so we can, open up the housing that is available for our locals, not just big investments to come in.
Yeah,
so
it's
those kind of things.
It's interesting you mentioned housing too, because the president touched on this last week, wanting to get Wall Street out of these private equity firms out of buying houses. And I imagine in your neck of the woods that there are a lot of communities where, like established neighborhoods, older neighborhoods, you'll see houses that a lot of them are for rent, but they're owned by private equity and can't be purchased by folks that live there at an affordable price.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that there's two bills that are actually at Congress right now. One of them came from the Senate, both of them are bipartisan. Both of them are looking at doing, the supply side of things. One is, like I said, it's stimulating the private growth, and the other is, with grants and things like that. One of the things that I would sign both of those if I was in office right now. But one of the things I would like to see is some type of grace period where the only people who can purchase, first right of first refusal for locals, veterans, and I would like to see some of those kind of things. But like I said, that's where I probably am more moderate. Is I'm looking for market solutions, not just the government to fix everything.
I got you. Talk to me a little bit about. You mentioned that you are socially a liberal. Talk to me a little bit about. Again, let's go back to you being a white guy. It's pretty obvious, right? You hear this in his voice. Let's talk to you about being a white guy. Why is it so hard for folks who aren't left of center to understand that white privilege exists? Do you think that they see that as some sort of a slur against what they've been able to accomplish? Is there a way to sort of flip that light switch so that we can reach across the aisle and talk to folks about this and let them understand that it's not so much that you benefited, it's that other folks didn't benefit? Or what is the messaging? How can that be messaged? Have you given any thought to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest misconception is that DEI and things like that is giving somebody an advantage. That's not what it's about. It's about giving somebody an opportunity.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough, the way I look, the way I sound, especially in Georgia, to get the opportunities that a lot of others might not. And you can even take that for this race. I look at my team, and there's so many brilliant minds on my team that are way more articulate than me and way more well-spoken than me, but I don't know that they're electable. And I think that I may actually appeal to, the white population in the CD11. And so if they'll listen to me, then maybe I can be a voice for my team and the underserved communities,
I ask this again because you're a white guy and you're from this district. You probably do have conservative friends, though, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, my family's conservative.
Oh my God, you've got to win. Would you win an election in your household, or would you win an election at the Thanksgiving table?
I have. They are conservative, and they probably did vote for Trump, but I at least have them regretting that.
Okay, that's a start.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing. I think there's a lot of people who voted for Trump that are regretting that vote. I think the way we get to them is, one, we can't rub the nose in them. In that decision, and we can't we can't call them stupid, right? Because who would want to vote for somebody or come join your side if that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying let them off the hook. I'm just saying we need them on our side to win. And if we can't pull some from the other side, we're not going to win. We're just going to be like all the other races. We're going to come close and just not get over the finish line.
Yeah. That's valid. And I try to remind myself that. In fact, I should just put it on a Post-it note. Stop saying stupid. Stop saying they're because I'm probably still guilty of that on occasion. But I try at the same time, because I'm like you. I'm from Georgia. I grew up in the suburbs of Augusta. I know a lot of conservative people. And I don't want to just say, you're an idiot. although there are a lot of, I mean, each party can.
I want to screen it.
Yeah.
but it doesn't help.
It doesn't.
Right? It doesn't help if that's what the goal is, just to get them on our side.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. It is one of those things, though, where I think it's important. Like, I have been chasing down Jeff Duncan to come on this show. And my producer says that he talked to somebody, and so that we're finally, I think, thought. But I've wanted to bring a guy like Jeff Duncan on specifically because he, being a former Republican, certainly benefited from that right-wing echo chamber, that media mechanism that kept perpetuating falsehoods. And he's not a dumb guy. He's a bright guy. A lot of Republicans in office, they're very bright people. I mean, they elected some real idiots, but he's a bright guy. And he knows a lot of that sort of stuff has been, part of the toxic stew that has us, I think, faced with this Trump era. I don't think Trump's any different than anybody else who listened to talk radio every day in their existence. I think he's just as misinformed as anyone else is. But I want to hear that from the other side. That, like, yeah, you know what? We've long benefited from that. It has not served us well. It has misinformed an entire generation or generations of voters, and we've got to correct that.
Yeah, it seems like it's a combination of wanting to misinform their base while also gaslighting and antagonizing us.
Oh, yeah. Owning the libs is important to them.
Yeah. And that's something that their base likes. We grew up in a time where we all kind of, well, especially my age, we used to, have cut down. At school, you sit there and just roast each other, right? It was a big popular thing, and I think that's kind of where we're at, with that. But at some point, they are just lying. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, they're just. If you're looked at that, Renee Good, and I don't know how that turned into what was it, the blue dress, the blue and gold dress.
Yeah, I remember that, the blue and brown dress.
I don't know how we're looking at that differently. I don't know how we look at all of those videos and we see something different. But as an attorney, I also understand that eyewitness is flawed. You definitely see what you want to see. And that's very unfortunate that we can't even agree on the right facts.
We're with Chris Harden. He is an attorney running for Georgia's 11th Congressional District, one of the 3 announced Democratic candidates for that primary position. We'll return with him on The Ron Show. It's Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. He's a Democrat seeking the nomination in the primary to go up against Barry Loudermilk for Georgia's 11th Congressional District seat. That's a heavily red district, but he believes he has a chance, and he sort of made the argument in the last segment that it's because he's a white male that maybe actually that gives him that chance in this district. So what is it about his background that gives him some insights into Democratic Party principles? Well, let's pick up on that. Now, you are, as an attorney, living in the exurban portion of suburban Atlanta, one might presume you came up with a silver spoon in your mouth. You came up from privilege or something like that, outside of being a white male, which, of course, we both agree is a privilege in and of itself. See, I'm a covert white privilege because I'm in the Rainbow Mafia. I'm in the Alphabet Mafia, so I was able to fly under the radar, so to speak. But you didn't grow up like the prototypical law student who might be a white male attending Georgia State University did, right? Like, poverty is something that you're pretty familiar with.
That's right. I didn't realize it when I was coming up in it. It was just my way of life. But, I guess it was around college, late high school where I realized, I don't think everybody came from a trailer.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of love in that trailer. There was a lot of hard times. But, a lot of who I am comes from my childhood in that trailer with my brother and my sister and my mom and dad. So,
which brings me to my next question. The social safety net is something that isn't just dependent or that folks who are living in the inner city or people of color are dependent on. Even those who have, again, the born-in blessing, I guess, in this country of being a white person or being a white male, find themselves needing that social safety net on occasion or throughout their childhood. And let's speak to the evisceration of the social safety net. And if you're elected to Congress, what you would do to sort of turn that tide and to actually win over hearts and minds, because I think it's important that folks understand that a lot of folks, even in MAGA country, MAGA counties in this country are some of the most impoverished counties in the country, and yet they vote against their own economic interests.
And some would say that we vote against my self-interest since I'm a white male. I could take full advantage of being white. But I think despite how the conservative media wants to do away with empathy, empathy is very, very strong in the South. especially in Georgia. And I think sometimes people have to learn the hard way, and it's got to affect them personally. But I think if we can bring them stories about how, you could be doing good, and all of a sudden just a car accident or some health scare, and now you went from stable to, not. You know what I mean? And it just does, those medical bills can pile up on you, and that's all it takes is one of those things. And sometimes I keep joking, I'm an attorney now, but I feel like I'm always outrunning poverty. Like the better I get, with inflation and everything, it's
preach.
Keeps trying to grab me. And, and it really is just, I'm very fortunate that I have good health. My wife and my kids are in good health, but, they were triplets, and they could have been born with some issues.
Yeah.
And then we would have been in a different situation. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to hear those stories, and I think they'll understand a little bit more. But
you and I are both Georgia guys. I feel like empathy ends at the racial demarcation, though. Would you agree with that? Oh
yeah. Yeah, I think it's very hard for somebody to put themselves in the another culture's shoes.
Yeah.
I haven't had that issue. I'm pretty versed in the black culture.
Are you saying you get invited to the cookouts? Is that what you're saying?
I've got the black card. I get to go to the cookouts. Yeah, man.
Oh my God. Yeah, you don't look like.
Now, if I start rapping, it's going to come out country.
Oh my God.
Country grammar.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to say it, but you don't look like you're missing a meal. You look like you're a healthy individual. Yeah. No, that's good. It's good stuff. Well, but let's talk a little bit about one of the hot button issues right now. We've seen ICE raids, and you mentioned Renee Good and what seems to be, and I think this affects your district, and obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene's vacated district, Dalton, Georgia, recently with an ICE raid that has garnered some headlines. How far is too far? What has gone wrong? I think we can take a bipartisan look at this and say, what has gone wrong with what the Biden presidency tried to do, which I think was dealing with root causation without dealing with the border situation, and what the Trump administration is doing right now? Well, I keep saying it over and over again. If the solution is more problematic than the issue that it's meant to address, then it's the wrong solution, right? And if we really want to have a serious conversation about immigration reform, we can have that. I don't think that's what the other side wants. I think they're doing exactly what they've been wanting to do. Whitening the country?
Yes. I mean, turning it white, Christian nationalists. But if you want to have a serious conversation about immigration, we can. I mean, and it starts with making it more affordable for people to come the right way. But the problem is people are here under status, and he's changing their status to make them deportable, right? So that's why I'm saying that I don't think that's the case, but we can make it affordable, make it shorten down the time limits that it takes to become, I think you have to wait 5 years before you can even apply for citizenship. And a lot of that has to do with just the programs that we have in place being understaffed and underfunded, obviously. Right. But now all of a sudden they've got a big, huge... we got money for ICE. We got money for ICE, right? Yeah. So I think it's disingenuous to say that they want immigration reform. I think that we do need it. I think that there are ways that we can improve it. I think we should make work visas easier to obtain. If the goal is that we want to make sure we know who's coming into the country, if that's our goal, then we can make it easier for people to document, become documented. What about stiffer penalties for businesses or folks who employ illegally? Because I feel like they're the real illegals in this. Well, I mean, that's the incentivized, right? I mean, that's the ones who incentivize them to come over and work. But yet again, I mean, I'm not gonna fault somebody for trying to better their life. Same way I came from where I came from. It's tough for me to, if I put myself in that situation, I probably would be doing the same thing. I got you. So that's something to remember too. I think a lot of people, like, if you were in the same situation, what would you do with your family? Chris Harden is running for the Democratic nomination to vie for the Georgia 11th Congressional District, and I'll include your website so that folks know where to go to donate to you if they want to do that. Even though he's an Auburn guy, we can still stop it. We can still support him in that endeavor. Chris Harden, thank you so much for joining the Ron Show today, man. I appreciate your time, buddy. Hey, man, I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to donate, that'd be great. But we're also doing a kickoff at the Schoolhouse Brewery in Marietta on the 20th. It's at the same time as Allsoft. So I'm sorry that we're going to take away some of his people for my kickoff, but They should have planned with us. We could have tag teamed up, right?
Yeah.
But,
that would have been great for you, right?
We're also needing some volunteers. We're starting to canvas, and we're starting to do some other things. So if anybody wants to get involved, it'd be very much appreciated.
All right. Chris, I appreciate your time, buddy. Have yourself a good one. Good luck.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for having me.
My thanks to Jay Bookman, Dana Barrett as well for joining us. We air weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now. The replay 8 to 10 a.m. the following morning on Georgia Now. 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Show notes at ronshowatl.com. Have a good one. See you tomorrow.